to Stand Speak Shine.
Thanks for having me.
As we were talking before the recording, and I was just kind of feeling into like your vibe, because it's the first time we've actually like met each other. I got a strong sense that you follow that rite of passage of many of the women that I attract into the space on the show who were in some kind of structured, corporate, high achieving, whatever, strong woman that you are, right? You're going to be led into something where you can lead or try to
Mhm.
lead. But then you hit this point in your life where it was like, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but you had an awakening and it was undeniable. And so here you are doing this work. Do you want to just maybe walk us through that really quickly of what that was like for you?
Yeah, I was pretty happy. I mean, I had a career in tech. I really got to travel with my Sagittarius moon. I got to travel and experience life, but I had an inner whisper that would not stop. And for any of you who've had that whisper or that intuition or that knowing, like it keeps coming and coming and coming. And it really has been pretty active over the last 15 years and probably the catalyst of why I even initially brought women together. I really felt like I felt so alone as a woman, a working mom with young children, a high demanding career. But then when I brought them together, the whisper was like, write it down, write it down, write it down. And I was like, oh my goodness. And then it would come through people. Are you going to write it down? Are you going to write it down? I'm like, I don't know. And little did I know that was the beginning of my career as being an author. I wrote my first book in 2010 with no intentions to write a book.
Mhm.
But I feel like life is sort of ushering me along to where I need to show up and how I need to do it. And those often come through whispers.
Yeah. And then if you don't listen, it comes as a roar in some weird life experience where you're like,
Mm,
okay, I'm stopping, I'm listening, right?
That
That's
is so true.
so, so share with us now kind of what that bridge was like for you going from, I mean, I don't know, did you have a spiritual life before? Were you raised religious? Like, what was your whole MO with the whole spiritual path thing?
Yes, yes. So initially was religious, but my mom, grandma, my aunts used to turn to mediums early on. So they used to take me to Lilydale. For anyone who knows of Lilydale and outside of Western New York, it's a medium community.
Hmm.
And they used to take me there when I was young, but I really didn't know, what was happening. I had a little bit here and there, but it wasn't until my mid 40s that I really turned back to it.
Mm-hmm. So how would you categorize is not the right word. So how would you describe that? Like fully stepping into that, not like taking that step of just, okay, I was over here playing in this arena and now I'm making the big, bold move to come over here and really playing my gifts, explore them. I mean, I'm assuming they were starting to emerge undeniably.
Well, they definitely were. I mean, I was getting whispers to get women together outside. I was getting whispers to do different things. But then in my personal life, things just started to crumble in different ways. And I feel like I sort of was like, that was sort of my rock for a long time. And my work was my work. I loved it. But I just felt like life was kind of crumbling around me a little bit. And I felt like I needed to figure out who I was. And so I turned to an energy center where I live. I showed up for a class I was not signed up for. And she really was one of my first practitioners. And since then, I probably have visited about, 80 to 100 practitioners. Not because I'm trying to be fixed necessarily, but I'm curious. Like, I want to
Yeah.
see what the energy practice is. I want to see how they do it. I want to see how it enlightens my journey. And then I share it with women in my community as like a trusted source. So I feel like I'm trial and error. I'm a three in human design. So I'm trying everything out and then bringing back people that I think could help women in my network.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm a 3-5 in the human design, so I totally
Mm,
know what you're saying.
Me too. Me
Brilliant.
too.
Yay. Look, I get it. So when you hit that moment of just kind of that line in the sand of I'm going to do this other work, takes a lot of courage. Um, I know for with our scope here of what we're going to talk about today, which is mindfulness. Why was that the thing you settled on? Why was that your thing? How did that come to be what you kind of niched and specialized in?
Well, it's interesting because I ended up going to a therapist too, in addition to my tapping teacher, because I was like, I need more joy in my life. I need to figure out like why this is so hard. Like, why am I not experiencing some of the joy I thought? And she said, well, you really should go to mindfulness class. And I was like, okay. So, anyways, back to my joy. How do I find that? And, the first meeting
How
we
do I
just kind
skirt around
of
mindfulness to find joy?
right. So we figured that out the first meeting. The second meeting, we went through a bunch of stuff, and she was like, you really need to go to mindfulness. The third session, she's like, if you don't go to mindfulness, you really can't come back because you need to go to mindfulness. And I was like, luckily, she also had her own practice, but she worked at a hospital where they had 8-week mindfulness classes designed by John Kabat-Zinn. And, I was not the greatest student when I arrived. I sort of categorized myself as an overachiever, an A+ deliverer. So I showed up with a notebook, a Starbucks, like I am ready. And, the woman's like, can you leave your notebook in the car? I'm like, nope, can't do it. I might get a good idea. This might be amazing. She's like, yeah, you really need to walk your notebook outside. I was like, no. So it didn't take till like the second time that I was like, okay, I'll leave my notebook. And I have to say, like, I was so used to processing and being in the ego energy, I didn't even know there was another way. And it took all 8 classes, 3 hours, 24 hours. It took all 8 classes for me to be like, wait a minute, my thoughts are just a part of who I am. How
Mm,
does that work? And it took a while. It took a while. And Suzanne, my teacher, I've since done work with, she's like, gosh, you're a tough student. But I think when women are conditioned to deliver and have gotten accolades to deliver,
yeah,
it's really hard to believe that that is not the space that's not the only space you can occupy as a human.
right. I'm the same way. I'm like a huge note taker, and dancing with like, how do I stay inside myself to quote unquote take the notes my soul needs, which is not a linear process. It's coming to you as energy, it's coming to you as light or information that can only be experienced, not rationalized or like analyzed. Was that kind of what you were experiencing by the eighth or the whatever the eighth class?
I think the first thing that really came to me is how much I beat myself up. I could not believe like when I was able to sit and just watch what I would say to myself, how many times I said, you can't. Who do you think you are? You're crazy. You can't do this. You're never going to make it. I don't know how I pushed through those thoughts so much, but I would say that mindfulness has given me space between myself, this body, and my thoughts so that I could be a viewer of how my mind works. And I think that was the first thing I recognized is holy cow, I really beat the crap out of myself.
Mm,
And so that was kind of a huge awakening for me of just like how much I just buried on myself the pressure of being perfect, the pressure of getting it done, the pressure of having to have it all figured out on things that I had never, ever even done before.
yeah.
So once I had that space, I had a little bit more perspective.
So, would you define in your own way what mindfulness is? I know you kind of alluded to it's sort of taking that step back and being the observer of what's happening in the mind. Is there more you would kind of say with that, or what's your definition of mindfulness?
Yeah, it really easy. You're just minding your thoughts.
Mm,
You're just minding your thoughts, you're minding your environment, you're just being aware, kind of like if you're in London, like mind the gap, like you're just minding kind of what is happening around you. And you don't really have to connect with the thoughts or ideas or person who's pushing you or nudging you. You can just observe. And I didn't realize I could be an active observer,
mm,
which you don't need a notebook for that. You can just watch because what the universe wants you to do will continue to come to you pretty consistently, I would say. So you really don't have to take a lot of notes about kind of where you're supposed to lead. Although I would say that I wake up a lot at 2, 3, or sometimes right when I open my eyes, I get a download of information.
mhm.
And oftentimes I do try to grab my phone in the notes section and just document it because I do seem to lose those messages, but I often don't lose the messages that kind of come in whispers, like, okay, JJ, now you need to bring the women outside. And I'm like, what the heck does that mean? And then over a series of months, it like unveils itself.
Mm. So when you're talking about mining, I'm just getting a visual of like gathering, bringing it all together, and then what do you do with it? So once
Mm.
you've gathered or mined it, or are you excavating? Like, explain the mining thing.
Yeah. So in my latest book, I talk about the difference between your energy of your ego and the energy of your soul. I would say that the first 30 years of my life, mostly lived in the energy of my ego. And the way that I visualize that is we as humans, we're born on this planet, we come in, and what I think about is almost like a teardrop of light comes into our body and turns our eyes on. It's part of our soul, it's part of a bigger community of energy. When our eyes open, we are in this human body. And in the human body is that ego energy, that whole body and ego and energy. And a lot of us live in that energy that is just grinding and striving, and it's often fear based, and it has worry and anxiety and depression and constant evaluation. And what I learned with mindfulness is that there is another way of living. You can recognize what's happening in your ego and your mind, and you can take notes of it or pay attention to it, but you can also have the ability to drop into your soul energy. And your soul energy that comes down from a bigger place or comes from a bigger place is where the love sits, where the connection, where the worthiness. And so being mindful for me allowed me to shift where I was living from. I had lived so long in the ego energy, and I really wanted to shift down into the soul energy. And for me, that took mindfulness.
So as far as the mining piece of it, maybe to give me a practical example of how, like, let's just say you got triggered by something. Okay. Somebody
Mm,
said something, or, you maybe a memory or something happens, right?
yes.
Like everything's
Mhm.
going fine, quote
Right.
unquote, fine. And that's usually when these things happen, when we're stabilized.
Mm,
So something got triggered. What's your go-to? How do you, what's your mental process? What's your spiritual when we say mining, I'm just,
right. Right.
bringing
So I'll
those
just set it
resources to
up by
yourself.
saying that mindfulness helped me be in the present moment more. So I wasn't reflecting on the past or planning for the future. Mindfulness gives me the ability to be in the moment that I'm in. And so when you're in the moment, when you're physically in the moment, you can feel your legs, you're watching what's happening, you can see what your mind's saying, you can feel your heart. It's a little bit easier to catch it. And so I'm not in it all the time, but I really try to work towards that more often than not.
Mhm.
But when I was hosting my first women's retreat, I got the whisper to bringing the women together. I sat on it for 2 years. I ended up talking to an energy practitioner that basically helped me like kind of work through the fears that I was having around it. And I remember the day the women were filing into the house that I had for the event. And as they were coming in, my body was like, "Oh, you are an idiot. What do you think you're doing? This is going to fail miserably. You're
Mm.
going to look horrible. You have no idea what you're doing." Like, da, 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 da. And I really just stood in the kitchen where I was getting ready, and I'm like, enough. I got this.
But you
I
said
got
that out
this.
loud, like you just literally,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Like as
yeah.
though I'm talking to another person. I'm like, enough. And then I follow up with, I got this. I
Mm.
got this. And even if I fail, I'm still going to learn. I got this. I just have to talk myself away from or like condition that energy to stay over there.
Yeah, that's great. I love just creating those. It reminds me of just like a state change where if you're in a mental loop and you're swirling, or you're in a trauma response, or you're, like you were saying, your self is beating your other self up. Your ego self is beating the rest you up to keep you safe, really. Then it's like, how do I change that state right now, like definitively? And usually it takes a physical, wouldn't you say, like a physical thing that you do to get out of that mental swirl.
Yeah. I mean, I will talk to it, throw my hand up, sometimes I'll hit my desk. I mean, a great way if I'm really grinding on something is to get my heart raised. So whether I run or I go outside and do
Mhm.
jumping jacks or I just throw on a YouTube video, anytime I can get my heart rate up, that also seems to help.
Interesting. So when we're talking about really getting your, like you said, feeling your own soul, feeling that essence,
Yeah.
that beautiful energy, so expansive. Like, how do you know the difference between, I mean, it's probably really obvious, but I would love your take. Like, you can still feel, would you agree with what I'm about to say? Like, you can still feel a measure of love for people and everything and completely be an ego. Like, you can still function as a successful, loving person in ego.
Oh, sure. I mean, most people do that. Yeah. I mean, but I feel like when you can move to your soul energy, what I do something really simple. I call it lassoing your energy. So if I feel like I'm in my head a lot, even if I'm being nice or even if I'm just kind of motoring through life, let's say I'm like chewing on a thought or an idea, or I'm trying to make a decision. I literally put my hands in the middle of my forehead. Some people will call it around your third eye, but I just kind of rub it there, just kind of get access. And I literally visualize lassoing the energy in my head that I just don't want to chew on anymore. It's stuff I don't want to think about, things I don't want to look at it the same way. And I physically lasso the energy with a really thick rope, right? And I get it and then I pull it right down. So I drag my fingers over my nose, over my lips, down my chin, down my throat. And I literally pull the energy down to my heart chakra and my heart center.
Mm.
I just take a breath. And now, like me, I'm always like, did I get it? Did I get it all? Do I still have it? Sometimes I have to go again. Sometimes I'll put my hand on my head to see if I have any more of that energy. Sometimes it hangs out in the back of my head like it's hiding. And I
Mm.
just like, again, just pull it down through over my neck, chest, and down to my heart center. And I just keep doing a couple checks. And sometimes I can just do it in the air of just lassoing the energy and pulling it down into my chest. And then I just let it sit there for a little bit.
Mm.
And oftentimes it's just not as big of a deal of when I have it in my head. I can just pull it down here and be like, can I just surround it in love and white light, pure energy? So that's one trick I use.
I love that. I do think visualization can be so incredibly powerful. Or like, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's kind of a Jungian, like active imagination, where you're like, I don't know if this is real. Am I making this up? Yeah, you are. And in so doing, like that that the energy derived from like your visual center and what you're creating in your mind's eye is real to your body. So that
Oh,
lasso,
completely.
yeah, yeah. So
Completely. And I'm sure you've heard, like, even if it happened 10 years ago and you're still sorting through it, your body thinks it happened right now.
yeah, yeah. So bringing your wiser self, that observer, to that moment where you're back when you're like 13 or something. I don't know. I'm just throwing a number out there, but like
Mm-hmm.
you're back in the trauma response or the trigger pattern that you keep going defaulting to in your fear, that you can be that wise observer through these mindfulness practices to just observe that 13-year-old response. Um, for me, I love everything you're saying. And two, for me, it's also like grounding myself, for so much of my life, it was all external. I was externalizing everything. And even like thinking that, my soul essence was separate from me, that I had to earn the right to have it, that I had to do things right. So like you say to yourself, did I get it? Did I get it? I'm always like, did I do that right? Just because that's so programmed in me that if I don't do it exactly right, I won't get XYZ. And usually it's a spiritual thing. So I'm still in the process of working through that. But what's exciting for me and what I've noticed lately is that I can rest into that place rather than having to work so hard. It's almost funny. I know you're laughing. Like it's kind of that cosmic joke you wake up to. You're like, it was in me all along. I just need
Mhm.
to rest into that sacred space inside of me.
It's
Call it soul
amazing.
space or whatever.
It's amazing, and it takes a long time to figure that out. And I feel like all the things that have happened to me have pushed me into remembering
Mhm.
that I and you and all of us are part of this galactic, beautiful, white, loving light. And each of us have that teardrop inside. And I believe our real life's work is to get that light to shine brighter than our ego.
Hmm. So as we kind of, wrap up the mindfulness piece, I love it, fullness. I love the word just like fullness, like fully embodying, fully embracing, fully allowing. So mindfulness lands in me that way. But is there, I know we're going to send some people to some of your top mindfulness practices, and you've already given us a couple. But is there anything else that you would add as it relates to just getting yourself to want to do it? I know this is the whole thing in psychology, right? Yes, we can talk about all these practices, but if at some point you have to value yourself enough or believe yourself, deem yourself worthy enough to receive feeling good. And a lot of my coaching practice initially was helping women see they deserve to have fullness in their lives, not the counterfeit, not the whatever, not the escapism or this or that, but actually like you're doing this work because you value yourself and you want to feel good, and feeling good is okay. So that's my spiel there. For I am so curious how in your practice you give that permission, or you maybe motivation is not the right word here, but I'm saying like giving that, like, get out of the apathy, like you deserve this. This is your birthright.
Well, you are it. I mean, that's the funny part is
Yeah.
like we are that light energy. We are that oneness. We are love. And what if you knew this before you came down and that you were conditioned to work to make it so being here? So, the TV is no accident. The TV is a perfect way for people to get zoned out, get out of our bodies, get zoned out. And so, what if you think everything is perfectly orchestrated for you not to figure it out, and that you are the detective in your life, and that you have it within you, but you need to figure out how to tap into it? And thinking about more of a game than realizing that when you tap into it, you basically have found the key to life, literally. Because when you tap into your soul energy, everything shifts for you because you're not living in this doubt, fear, worry, anxiety, depression, angst. You're actually living in like, everything is for me. This has been created. Look how beautiful this day is. And as corny as it sounds, it is a beautiful way to live. And I feel like it is perfectly conditioned for us to have to seek it out.
Yeah, that's so true. It's like there's these little breadcrumb trails ahead of us, and we can, like screens, right? Put a screen in front of our face, like you're saying, and just kind of zone out. Everything's inviting in the natural world. Like nature is always inviting us in. And for me, I have to do those state changes, like you're saying, like snap out of it, like go outside, time out, like literally do the timeout sign when I start feeling like I am in a, I'm about to fully disconnect. I'm about to zone. I'm about to go
Mm,
zombie. And sometimes I
mm.
intentionally choose that because I just want to rest,
Yeah.
you
Yeah. I mean,
know?
you can't, it's hard to be in it all the time, but you can practice very easily of just going outside in nature. And instead of taking a walk and talking to your girlfriend or friend on the phone or listening to an audiobook, see how many things you can recognize on your walk because it's just practicing noticing. Mindfulness is just noticing what's happening around you, inside or out. And then how are you going to respond because of it?
Hmm. And do you feel like if we're really noticing and we're really deeply like, we'll know in the moment how to respond, typically, right?
Oh, so much so. And you'll generally be working from like more love and light. So you're not going to be flying off the handle. You're going to be interesting. Like I go through like being like, that is interesting. Why is that happening to me right now? What is the lesson? What do I need to learn? Why did that person say that to me? Why did I get caught here? I mean, it's amazing how many ways the universe talks to you
Hmm.
through people, through signs, through messaging. I feel like I'm constantly watching for my next universal message.
And that can be just like an exciting adventure, right?
It
Just
makes it a lot more
yeah.
fun. and even things that have happened to me, like I realize like some friendships have, now that my frequency is higher, I work on a higher frequency because I'm really zoning into this frequency level of higher energy, and, and it really comes down to like how I talk to myself, what I say to others, what I watch, what I listen to, what I eat, like all of that is involved in how I raise my frequency. And people that I used to hang out with or talk to, some of them have just faded away. And I believe it's because when you raise your frequency, you kind of are like elevating to another level of learning. And
Hmm.
sometimes those people are not going to come with you. And
Yeah.
at first it's heartbreaking, but then you realize that new energy is coming in new ways and new experiences, which is all why we're here, right? So Oprah and Eckhart Tolle says it's the Earth School. And I
Yeah.
wholeheartedly
Yeah.
believe that.
I do too. We're just here to learn. And if you learned, it wasn't a mistake because you learned. And
There
just
are
keep
no
getting,
mistakes.
there
Yeah, there
aren't.
are
And
no mistakes.
yeah, we're just here to experience, to grow, to expand through difficult experiences. So, okay, JJ, where can people find you online? I know you have an offer 10 lessons gained from mindfulness practice. Do you want to direct people to that?
Yeah, so it's just something I actually created with my mindfulness teacher because years ago, I'm an Aquarius, so I'm a little innovative. So years ago, probably 4 years ago, I recorded this series with my mindfulness teacher because I wanted to show 10 lessons I learned from mindfulness, and I did it with my mindfulness teacher, so it's legit. I'm not just like making it up. I made her come on and just validate kind of why mindfulness is so important for women and men, but I do a lot of work with women. So you can go to jjdgeronimo.com/mindfulness for women. And it's just a quick video series you can take on the road with you. You can also find me in Together We Seek online, where I'm interviewing all the energy practitioners I'm working with so that I can make it easy for other women to kind of work through their shadows, dive back into their family tree or what things happened with their mother or father, like really working through that energy to create
Mhm.
space for more love and light.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was a lively discussion, and I found myself flipping in and out of being the observer because once you named it, I'm like, oh yeah, now that I have that awareness that it's just the more aware we are, it kind of starts from there. And so
Mm,
when you were talking about being the observer, I immediately in my mind's I went into like my whole visual with this is being like a queen on her throne, just watching what's happening. I know it's a little bit, but that works for me. Like I just am able to rest into like, oh, here's what's happening in my courtyard. Here's what's happening in the queendom or the kingdom, whatever. And
mm,
for me, that's just my cue. And I had forgotten that's what I do until this discussion. And I'm like, I need to
mm.
come back to that. It works for me. It works. So
It's a great reminder that you're not here to do all the time. You're here
yeah.
to experience, you're here to observe, you're here to hear the whispers. You have so many angels and people working with you, but oftentimes there's no space for them. So,
Mhm.
creating that space that you can work in conjunction with your energy and support system here, that you can see with your eyes, and also that you can physically feel or experience that you can't, that are might not be humans here with you on Earth.
Mm, that's so lovely. And also brings me back to like giving everyone just the permission to feel good. It's okay to feel good.
It
It's
is.
okay to go after your dreams in your heart and really listen to what your soul is trying to tell you. So thanks for that reminder today.
Thank you so much.